Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely reframe how we look at age, time, and, well, what it actually means to survive. We humans are absolutely obsessed with longevity, always trying to add a few more years to our lives. But out in the natural world, biological success isn't measured in decades, it is measured in efficiency. And some of the most fascinating creatures on this planet have mastered the art of compressing an entire, meaningful existence into an unimaginably brief window of time. Okay, let's dive right into this. What if your entire life's purpose, everything you were meant to do, had to be achieved in just 30 minutes? Now, that is not some wild hypothetical. If you are the female Delinia americana Mayfly, that's literally your reality. You emerge into the open air as an adult, and you have exactly half an hour to complete your entire biological mission before you die. It really sets our philosophical throughline for today. Evolution doesn't necessarily care about growing old. It cares about brutal, elegant efficiency. To understand how nature pulls this off, here's our roadmap for today. 1. Fast lives, no tragedies. 2. Mating and frantic finales. 3. Tiny lives, global impact. 4. Unlocking secrets of aging. And finally, number 5, extreme records of nature. Trust me, the biological outliers at the end are absolutely going to blow your mind. All right, section 1. Fast lives, no tragedies. The illusion of time. We really need to break this preconceived notion that a short adult life is somehow a sad one. Take the dragonfly. This is a species that's been successfully patrolling our planet's wetlands for roughly 300 million years. Yet the adult dragonfly, that beautiful, iridescent aerial predator you see darting over a pond, often lives for just a matter of weeks. It's not a tragedy, it's a completely different biological strategy. Now, what's really interesting here is the staggering contrast between the two halves of these insects' lives. On one hand, you have this aquatic childhood. A dragonfly nymph can spend up to 5 years living a fierce, murky existence entirely underwater. But then comes the frantic finale. The adult stage we all recognize is really just an incidental, fleeting chapter designed purely for reproduction. In fact, for the closely related mayfly, the adult stage is so singularly focused on mating that they don't even possess functional mouths. Their digestive systems are just filled with air instead of food, because eating would be a complete waste of precious time. And that brings us to a really powerful idea. Survival as a species and survival as an individual are two entirely different things. When mayfly emergences happen, they happen spectacularly. These mass hatches produce clouds of insects so intensely dense that they literally show up on National Weather Service radars, mimicking entire weather systems along the Mississippi River. Every single insect in that living cloud is essentially a flying countdown timer. Most will be dead before sunrise. The individual is fleeting, but the species is immortal. Moving right along to section 2, mating and frantic finales. Evolution's need for speed. When an organism's social structure or its surrounding environment gets intensely demanding, we start to see this brutal live fast, die mating biological rule take over. Efficiency becomes paramount, and individuals become profoundly expendable. Just look at the male honeybee, also known as the drone. Talk about a disposable existence, right? And honestly, a terrible retirement plan. His sole purpose in a highly complex eusocial colony is just to mate with a virgin queen. If he actually pulls this off, his reproductive apparatus is physically torn from his body and he dies immediately. And for the majority of drones who fail to mate, well, as summer ends, the worker bees physically expel them from the hive. They refuse to let them back in, leaving them to starve and freeze to death in the cold. It sounds incredibly cruel, but it's just pure evolutionary optimization. And this brilliantly illustrates how extreme environments literally force life into the fast lane. Take the coral reef Pygmy Goby. This is a fully formed vertebrate with a spine, a heart, and a nervous system just like us. Yet its absolute maximum lifespan is a mere 59 days. Why? Because the intense predation on the coral reef means small fish are almost guaranteed to be eaten quickly. Evolution realized, hey, there's no point in building a body to last years if it's going to be eaten in weeks. So the goby metabolically sprints through its entire life. Which leads us to section 3, tiny lives, global impact. Size does not equal scale. We are going to confront a fascinating paradox here. We tend to think that short-lived, tiny creatures are insignificant. But nature shows us that the organisms with the absolute shortest durations can wield massive, world-altering consequences. Think about this incredibly short window, 14 to 28 days. That is the typical wild lifespan of the female mosquito. In this desperately tight 2 to 4 week window, she has to hatch, mature, find a mate, and blood feed. And And remember, she doesn't drink blood for her own nutrition. She needs it purely to trigger the development of her eggs. Everything is jam-packed into that tiny time frame. So the crucial point is this staggering number, 700,000. That's how many human deaths are caused globally every single year by mosquito-borne illnesses like malaria and dengue fever. The jarring juxtaposition of an insect that lives for just a few weeks and yet kills 750,000 people annually proves for sure that biological impact and biological duration are completely disconnected. That same immense scale applies to the ocean's copepods. We're talking about a marine crustacean roughly the size of a grain of rice that lives for maybe 30 days to a few months. Yet, billions of them conduct a daily 1,000-meter vertical migration to avoid predators, literally serving as the foundational link in the entire global ocean food web. And more importantly, as they feed near the surface and excrete waste that sinks to the deep ocean, they physically sequester carbon, which regulates our planet's climate. All of this heavy ecological lifting happens in just a matter of weeks. All right, Section 4, Unlocking Secrets of Aging, Science's Short-Lived Heroes. Now, you might be wondering, okay, why does this matter to me? Well, it turns out the frantic life cycles of what we often just dismiss as household pests actually make them invaluable heroes for human genetics and modern medicine. This number is just astounding. Approximately 75% of known human disease genes have a functional equivalent in the tiny 3-millimeter fruit fly, Drosophila melanogaster. That little insect hovering over an old banana in your kitchen shares a vast amount of the molecular machinery that governs your own health and illness. Because the fruit fly and the common housefly have such incredibly brief lifespans, going from egg to adult in just 10 days if it's warm enough, scientists can alter a single gene or change the temperature and watch those effects ripple across an entire lifetime in mere weeks. Instead of waiting decades to study aging in humans, researchers can observe dozens of fly generations in the time it takes to run a single short clinical trial. This brevity has directly led to multiple Nobel Prize-winning medical breakthroughs. Their fast life is exactly the tool we use to decode our own. And trust me, you're going to want to brace yourself for what we're about to see next. Let's move to our final stretch and see how this builds up in Section 5, Extreme Records of Nature, Biology's Outliers. We've seen how fast life can be, but these next creatures completely manipulate our fundamental understanding of time itself. Consider the bizarre arithmetic of Laborde's chameleon from Madagascar. This lizard spends roughly 66% of its entire existence, so about 8 to 9 months, developing inside a buried egg. It spends only 34%, just 4 to 5 months, living as a free, walking adult. Then, in near-perfect synchrony, the entire wild adult population dies off during the dry season. That vivid green creature you see chilling on a branch is already running on a nearly expired timer, and its species survives solely as a hidden clutch of eggs buried beneath the dirt. Then we have the worker honeybee, which shows us how the environment literally dictates longevity. The summer bee lives a frantic 6 to 8 weeks, visiting 1,500 flowers a day until she physically shreds her own wings and just wears her body out for the hive. But the winter bee, the exact same species, sometimes even the sister from the exact same queen, receives environmental signals of cooling temperatures that completely alter her biology. She develops a totally different hormonal profile, builds up more fat reserves, stays indoors, and lives for 4 to 6 months. Time is completely relative to the task at hand. But nothing, and I mean nothing, bends time quite like the microscopic all-female rotifer. Normally, these complex organ-filled aquatic animals complete their whole life cycle in just 1 to 3 weeks. However, when their environment dries out, they enter a state called cryptobiosis. All metabolic processes just stop. They essentially turn into biological dust, pausing the clock of their own mortality. And just how effective is this? Unbelievably effective. In a remarkable 2021 study, researchers recovered bedelloid rotifers from the Siberian permafrost. They thawed them out, rehydrated them, and these creatures, estimated to be roughly 24,000 years old, woke up and immediately resumed living and reproducing as if they had just taken a quick afternoon nap. A 3-week lifespan successfully interrupted by a 24,000-year pause. No way, right? As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you looking at this final, provocative thought. We spend our whole lives fighting against the clock, always trying to stretch our duration on Earth. But when you look at the elegant efficiency of a Mayfly, or the 59-day sprint of the Pygmy Goby perfectly fulfilling its evolutionary mandate, it really shifts your perspective. These animals aren't missing out. They are executing a flawless biological equation. It leaves you wondering, is long life really the ultimate goal? Or is a perfectly utilized short life the true masterpiece of nature? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into nature's shortest lifespans. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.